Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action!
Hi y'all, this is Jerry Williams, aka TV Jerry. The lineup for this year's Virginia Film Festival has been announced, and tickets go on sale on the 11th. I'll have a link to the festival on the webpage for the show at tvjerry.com.
The isolation of being in a box by yourself and being left only with your mind. That isolation can be crushing sometimes, but when God steps in, it becomes something different. That's what was happening in the hole.
I'm up, over, yeah, over, yeah.
That was the opening scene of Songs from the Hole that's showing at this year's In Thrive Festival. The festival, in its second year, celebrates the voices and talents of incarceration survivors. This film, Songs from the Hole, was the inspiration of J88, who at 15 took a life. While serving a double life prison sentence, he began to write the songs that became the genesis of this documentary visual album. We'll be chatting with J88 and the director, Contessa Gales, about this unique film.
Sifter Review of the Week.
Nobody Wants This on Netflix. Kristen Bell is up to her usual comic charms as an agnostic podcaster who falls for an affable young rabbi, Adam Brody. Their affection comes on fast, but the cultural differences create conflict. Fortunately, this sweet little romance has several things going for it. The chemistry between them is delightful, while Justin Loop, her sister, Timothy Simons, her brother, and Tova Feldshuh as his mother provide additional fun characters. Erin Foster, who experienced a similar situation in her life, has penned a sometimes funny but always appealing script. There's nothing especially new here, including the generic title, which was originally titled Shiksa, but the acting, writing, and directing combined to create an amiable and enjoyable rom-com. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm excited today to be joined by two very creative and interesting people, Contessa Gales and JJ88. So first of all, why don't you tell us who each of you is and what your involvement was on the movie?
My name is Contessa Gales. I'm the director and producer of Songs from the Hole.
And cinematographer and editor, I might add.
That's correct. We played many roles, all of us. It was a lot of all hands on deck to make this film.
And I'm JJ88. I'm the writer, protagonist, and co-producer.
What's your connection to this film in the first place, Contessa?
In 2018, I released a documentary for CNN called The Feminists on Cell Block Y. And while I was filming that the year previous, 2017, that's when I met 88 and our producer, Richie, for the first time.
Footnote.
Richie Risada is one of the film's producers and 88's music producer.
It was filmed in prison where they were incarcerated together. And Richie was the co-founder and leader of a self-help group for men on the inside who were learning about patriarchy and toxic masculinity and reading feminist literature. So that's how I first learned just a little bit of his story in the context of what he was sharing in the group with the other incarcerated men. It was actually the last day that I was filming that he and Richie were playing on the keyboard in the prison gym on a trash can that was flipped upside down, their music that they had made together. And it was the music that 88 had written in solitary confinement at another prison. And then when he got to this prison where Richie was, they got together and put music to the lyrics. So that's where I heard the music for the first time as well. Fast forward a year, I don't know, 88, if you want to pick up from there, what happened after that?
After Contessa came and filmed The Feminists on Cell Block Y, Richie and I continued to work on this music. We were trying to figure out how to best go about promote the music, considering that I was incarcerated with a life sentence. At the time, Richie was still incarcerated. And so we devised like an idea to see if we can bring Contessa on, if she would like work with us to film music videos for the songs that we had created. But it over time developed into what we now have, a documentary visual album where we tell the story of my family and tell the story of this music and how it healed us.
Just to clarify for both of you, I know, Contessa, you mentioned CNN. You worked for years doing work for CNN before you went out on your own, I guess?
That's right. I was at CNN for 4 years, and the last project that I made for them was The Feminist on Cell Block Y, and that was also the project that let me know that I needed to try the independent filmmaking route to see if I could do this on my own and really just like push the boundaries of the storytelling and the creativity beyond what would be possible at a place like CNN.
Which you did in this. I mean, it's not like a normal documentary. And before we go a little further, JJ, you mentioned yourself and Richie, and you mentioned you were incarcerated at the time. From the camera behind you, it looks like you're out now. So tell me the story behind you and Richie's getting out.
Well, Richie was sentenced to 10 years, and of that 10 years, I believe he did 7.5, and was released in 2018. I was incarcerated when I was 15 for committing a murder, sentenced to 40 years to life plus life. I served 18 years behind bars and was freed in 2022.
Surprise guest drop in.
Somebody dropped in who wanted to add a little perspective here.
Footnote.
David Smith is the director of the In Thrive Festival. David, thank you for joining us. We were actually just getting started about the movie, and this is perfect timing because 88 was talking about his getting released in 2022, and that is a perfect segue into the In Thrive Festival and what it's about. So why don't you tell us, where did the idea for this festival come about?
Like JJ, I spent time incarcerated myself. I did 16 and a half months in solitary confinement in the Norfolk City Jail.
Wow.
And let me tell you, as a guy who was not politically active, not active in advocacy before that point, that will get you motivated to do change. So
Sure.
I get out of prison back in 2016 and start doing some advocacy work here and there. There's this incorrect narrative about what it means to survive incarceration. So if that incorrect narrative is being created by media, we correct that narrative with media. And that was the idea of the In Thrive Film Festival, was to highlight the voices and talents of incarceration survivors so that we can share our story on our terms and then take control of that narrative about what it means to have survived incarceration. So that's how we got to where we are right now.
And what does that title mean, In Thrive?
From incarceration to thriving.
Ah, okay.
Now, that can sound very aspirational. And I think a lot of people have certain images in their mind of what thriving means. But for me, thriving is whatever it means to you. For some people, that means living a clean and sober life so they don't get locked back up. And you know what? That's thriving. Other people, I got a job so I can keep a roof over my head. That's thriving.
What was the start of the festival and how has it developed since then?
Last October was our first festival here in Richmond. And I'm going to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I was a pastor. I was an advocate. I was in policy. But I went around, I talked to a bunch of festival directors. I learned from them. And we did our first festival. We had folks come in from around the country for it, which blew my mind. Between last year and this October, we did 2 more festivals, one in Northern Virginia and one in Southside Virginia at the invitation of a conservative Republican legislator who wanted to change the narrative about incarceration in his district, which has more prison beds than any other district in Virginia.
Right.
So this next year, we've got plans for taking it around the country. We are working on dates in Charlotte, South Bend, Indiana, Jackson, Mississippi, Boston, Massachusetts. And at the end of 2025, we'll be in Los Angeles, California as well. It's exciting being able to take these stories to folks across the country.
You mentioned you're a pastor and these films are taking place at the First Baptist Church here in Richmond. Is there a connection? Is you say, hey, folks, I want to do it here, or how did that work out?
First thing is, since we are not your traditional film festival, we have such an emphasis on community. A place like in Richmond, you have the Byrd Theater, grand, beautiful old movie theater, but there's no space for the community. There's no space for tabling. There's no space for interaction.
Right.
So we need to find a venue that has theater capabilities plus that space to congregate, to bring people together. In this case, Jim Somerville, the pastor of First Baptist, is very active in this area of justice reform. This is an area he cares passionately about. He also happens to be a good friend of mine. We work out together every week. So when I was looking for a place to host it last year and I was sharing my struggles trying to find what we needed, he's like, hey, I've got a venue here. We've got a big movie screen. We've got this wonderful space. Can we make this work? And it's been a great partnership these last 2 years.
I'll respond and say thank you. And yeah, our film does explore themes of faith. My family is a very faithful family, and I was raised in a Christian household. My father is an elder in my childhood church. So it does feel very fitting that this film is shown in a church.
Right.
It's kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool, actually. I have my first performance in LA, like my first big musical performance in LA coming soon. And we're going to be doing it at a place called Pico Union, which is originally a synagogue and then given over to a church community so they can have their service. And now it's a venue for public performances and things like that. So I just love that this film is finding its way to be shown in holy places, places
Great.
of sacrament. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, David, anything else you want to mention before we get back to talking about the movie itself?
Look, when I was in solitary confinement, I am about as white can get. Let's just be honest here. I was a suburban white guy and a pastor of a very predominantly white congregation. And I end up in a very predominantly urban jail.
Right.
And I was in solitary confinement for those 16 and a half months. But the guy that was beside me most of the time, and he was an aspiring rapper. And he would do his raps for me. And we like just share back and forth, like just ideas, bounce ideas back and forth off of each other. And I really felt that was in the movie, this idea that even when we're in isolation, there's that hope of humanity that is able to connect us in this space, not because of the situation, in spite of the situation we're in, because we have that hope, we have that desire to get beyond where we are right now. And seeing you on film doing that, it really put words in the experience of what I lived through as well. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that is your reflection. We definitely intended to make this film for people impacted by incarceration and community violence. And so I love that, you even, regardless of background, you find identity in our story too, because that's the point. We're all very connected. We all share stories. We all share the love of family, the love of community, and the quite frankly, the desire to thrive. These are principles and themes that I think everybody can relate to and connect to.
Well spoken.
And Tess, I just want to thank you as well for just you partnering to make this happen. I am just so thrilled with what you've been doing with your work and bringing this to the big screen forward. So thank you.
Thank you. It was my absolute honor and privilege.
Thank you, David, for dropping in.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
We hinted at this right before David came in, and Contessa, I think maybe a lot of this was your contribution. This is not a standard doc. This is not like something you would see on CNN. This is, as 88 mentioned, this is a visual album. There's graphics, there's slow motion, there's all kind of interesting imagery and even animation. What made you want to go that direction, or what inspired you to go that direction as opposed to just doing a talking head documentary?
I think that the origin stories being what they are, what 88 described, the music predated the idea of a documentary film. So it was always music first, the way that we were going to approach putting this story together.
Right.
And we just thought of, all of the ways that the music is so inextricably linked to 88's experience and his family's experience, and how the nonfiction side of what we were filming with his family on the outside and the narration via interviews that 88 was giving over the prison phone calls that we recorded, how that could just directly reflect what was happening on the music side and the musical fiction elements that we recorded with actors kind of portraying younger version of 88 and his family throughout the years. The ways that those two elements could speak to each other and kind of create this dialogue that together told the story. So it was always music first. And then all of the other visual elements like the archive, the animation, the handwriting, that's 88's real handwriting from his notebook, from the original treatments that he wrote for the music videos and, his actual lyrics that he wrote. All of that was kind of like fragments and things that we could use, especially because this piece is so much built around the idea of like memory and dreams. This experience that we're portraying is starting in childhood all the way into present day adulthood, what that could look like cinematically to have your memories and your dreams kind of put together over time like that.
So what did you think because I know you and Richie originally wanted this to be music videos. So how did that process happen when maybe you got Contessa and she said, no, I don't want to do music videos. I want to expand this. How did that whole process come about and how did you respond to it?
I remember early on writing down a note once that I wanted to do like a documentary about my life. It stemmed from people telling me, you should write a book. You should, write a book. And I'm like, I'm not necessarily like that type of writer. I
Right.
would much rather write in the realm of music and film. So when the idea came up to make it a documentary as well, and I think what's true about documentaries, or I should say documentarians like Contessa, the great ones like Contessa, usually look for what's true. And so when the idea of making a documentary joined with this visual album idea, it felt right because that was true to who I was. There was a story to tell beyond the music, but the music was so central to the story. And so it just kind of made sense for me as an artist when we began to discuss the creation of what I would like to call a new genre, this like new form of using music and visuals as like a peek into my internal world and using the documentary side as just a very cohesive and skillful way of telling like a family's story and what they've gone through.
It's after watching the whole thing, like, good heavens, this was complicated to put together because you have narrative, you have documentary, you have real people, you have actors. Sometimes I think you were shooting really in some prisons, and sometimes you were shooting in people's houses, real mothers, real sons, or not. Contessa, how did that work? I mean, you had so many things going on. How did that start, or how did that process work so that you created what you created?
Yeah, it was a lot of moving pieces, as you're saying, and a lot to try to figure out as we were going. We had, plenty of references to other art, but not really a blueprint for this type of form that we were trying to create.
Right.
So it was a lot of figuring it out as we went along, and especially in the edit, like a lot of just rearranging the puzzle pieces into a bunch of different combinations until it really clicked and worked. But in terms of the production, we were in production for about 2.5 years, and we were filming the music videos, the musical fiction portions, over the course of a year. And as we were doing that, we were also filming the nonfiction material with 88's family and recording all of those prison phone calls that are the narration for the film. 88 had written these original music video treatments for most of the songs, and that was our starting point. But as we were filming on the outside and the nonfiction material, and I was learning more about, 88's story and his family story, and just hearing their perspectives and the way that they describe certain events and things that unfolded, I wanted to be able to like infuse a lot of what you were hearing and learning on the nonfiction side into the music videos so that they really spoke to each other and reflected each other. So over time, over the course of that year that we were filming the music videos 1 month at a time, they were being rewritten, and how they fit into the film was also evolving as things were unfolding in real life. It was just a process. It wasn't like we had a script and then we went out and shot everything all at once and that was it. It was really like evolving over time so that it could just be malleable in a way that I think this piece really needed, to have that flexibility to just like change and be molded over time. And there were some things that we shot that I didn't know were going to be used in other ways in the edit. And there were some things that were very intentionally like, we're shooting this for this, and that's how it ended up. But I think that was the other thing in the edit, especially with documentary. A lot of the storytelling is discovered in how you put things together. Yeah, it was just a lot of being flexible and discovering as we went.
Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting were the phone calls, the real phone calls, because obviously you had to be recording 88, I guess, on the phone while his mother or his father or whoever was reacting. I'm assuming the parents were like, sure, let's do this. I'm okay with reacting no matter what he says. And let me ask this too, because it seemed like they were actors for a while playing some of those characters, and then suddenly they became the real people, or is that just me misunderstanding?
I mean, this is a film that I think you have to watch a few times to like really get all the things, and you'll
Okay.
discover something new every time you watch it. But the real life characters, the real life film participants are introduced pretty early on via photos. We have the actors who are portraying versions of them, but those actors are also just playing generally a Black mother, a Black father. And you see in the film the ways that, they might represent 88's actual parents. And then in another instance, they can represent a different family. It was meant to be flexible in that way so that they can kind of represent the experience of Black family in general. But in terms of their participation, 88 could speak to, how he approached them about this. But on my end, I think it was just really taking time to build relationships and to build the trust to know that it wasn't just me coming in telling their story, but that I was making this story collaboratively with their son, that it was our project together. Yeah, just not feeling entitled to their time or their vulnerability or anything like that.
So 88, talk about that. How did you get your parents to say, okay, I'll be on camera? And did they know what was coming sometimes when you gave them news? Were they reacting in real time, or did they already know and they were kind of acting?
No, those are real time reactions.
Wow, okay.
Thank God. When I first initially told my parents in particular about this, they're very private people. My dad is a very private man. My mother is a very private woman. My mother, Jackie, is also a very private woman. So all three of my parents are truly private people. However, they all support me in being an artist. They all support me in being a storyteller. And so once I told them that this wasn't, like you said, a filmmaker coming in to just record us and film us and then kind of in the exploitive way that the film industry does today, when I explained to them that it wasn't that, but rather it was a collaboration between Richie, Contessa, and I, and we were trying to create something meaningful for people like us, they were down. I first and foremost told them that I wanted to tell this story so that it helped families like ours. And as things unfolded, I would imagine, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but I imagine that as we went on through production and things unfolded in our lives and in our stories in real time, I'm not sure that they even thought about the cameras being there or the recording devices being there. They kind of just lived life and allowed us to document it alongside them as they lived.
Great, great. Now, you mentioned they supported you as a storyteller and musician. I'm assuming before you were incarcerated, you were already showing those interests, that you were already writing and creating?
I didn't take it serious, and I didn't, mind you, I was incarcerated as a child, so
Right, right.
I was doing a
15,
lot
right?
of, yeah, I was doing a lot of things at that time. So I don't know that my family knew I was exactly an artist, or I even knew. I don't think I knew until I was 25, to be honest.
Wow.
I've been writing poetry, music, stories, and, visions or ideas, scenes since probably about the seventh grade, just for my own entertainment and imagination and rapping and singing for the entertainment of my friends. And then as I lived through incarceration, my dad in particular saw it as a means for me to cope. And my older brother, Victor, was also a musician and a writer and rapper and singer. And my dad initially didn't support that because we are a very Christian family. So rapping was the world's music, it's worldly
Right,
music,
right.
But I remember my dad saying to me once in visiting, like, I won't make the same mistake I made with your brother. I'm going to support you. I'm gonna ask that don't say curse words in your rap.
Right,
I'm
right,
gonna ask
right.
that you uplift people and make people dance, make people happy. And that was always his message to me, and the way he decided to support me as an artist. So it was a lifelong journey of getting support from my community to be an artist, but it first took me to even recognize that I was one.
Congratulations. Y'all won the Vision Audience Award for South by Southwest, which is great. That
Thank
was
you.
wonderful. Were
Thank
y'all
you.
there?
It's
How was the
huge.
response?
It was
It was a
huge.
big response there. Yeah. We had multiple screenings that were all sold out.
Wow.
I don't think we were even thinking about the audience award, but the way that folks really responded and how it resonated with them, I guess it was like a really pleasant surprise after we came back home to find out that we had won the audience award there. And, winning the grand jury prize at Black Star was another huge stamp of validation for us
Yeah.
as artists in
Major.
particular. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are the plans for distribution at this point? Obviously, you're working festivals. Do you have anything going on that to move it forward?
Yeah, we have folks working on the sales for us and things are moving. So hopefully we'll have some news in that department soon in terms of how people can see it more widely.
Speaking of people seeing it at the festival here, are either of you coming to Richmond for this showing?
We're sadly not going to be able to come to Richmond. We're really bummed that we're not going to be able to make it.
Now, one question I always like to ask everybody at the end is when you're not promoting your documentary or writing music, in your case, 88, what are you watching on TV? What movies? And I have to ask, first of all, Sing Sing. Have you seen that? It's a wonderful film.
No, but I think we're going to get to see it at San Quentin when we play at the San Quentin Festival next week.
Okay. So anyway, back to my question. So what are y'all watching when you're just sitting around at home?
I could just tell you what I recently watched while I was in Santa Cruz. I watched The Godfather.
Oh, wow, the original.
Yeah, of course,
wow.
of course. It's a I mean, I don't have to speak about how great that movie is cinematically and story-wise. And to be more specific, I watched The Godfather 2 because I think that one is like really epic and dives into Michael's story and his connection to his father. But I will watch pretty much anything, actually. If you suggest it and you think it's good, I might give it a shot.
Well, I want to mention one thing because you mentioned The Godfather, and Contessa, you might really enjoy this if you haven't seen it, and I can't remember the name of it. It was about the making of The Godfather. It was a series. It wasn't a documentary. It was a series that was really good, and it was amazing to find out all the stuff they went through to make that movie.
Footnote.
The name of that series is The Offer, and I'll have a link to my review of it on the webpage for this show at TV Jerry. Anyway, Contessa, what about you?
I'm going to shout out my two favorite documentaries of the year, which I've seen a couple of times each, besides ours, of course. Seeking Me This Weekend by Jasmine Jones and The In-Between by Robbie Flores.
Before I let you go, is there anything you want to mention about the film that you haven't had a chance to talk about?
So we're doing an impact and engagement campaign. So beyond just the film festival circuit, we're going into community and into carceral facilities to show the film. So if anyone wants to partner, we're open to hearing from folks about partnerships to get this film in front of directly impacted folks.
Well, I want to thank you both. It's a wonderful film. I really enjoyed it. I hope people will come out to the festival, and I want to thank you both for being part of it today.
Thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That was director Contessa Gales and J88, whose life and music was the inspiration for Songs from the Hole that's showing at this year's In Thrive Festival. I'll have a link to the festival and the film's website on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Saturday night. Coming out to celebrate the 50th anniversary of SNL, Jason Reitman directed this film about the madness and fun leading up to the first broadcast. The Apprentice. Sebastian Stan plays a young Donald Trump in this film about his real estate business in the 70s and 80s, with the helping hand of infamous lawyer Roy Cohn, played by Jeremy Strong. Terrifier 3. This sequel about the deadly clown takes place on Christmas Eve. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. This documentary is about the Superman star and his life after being paralyzed in 1995. Piece by Piece, not to be confused with Atlantis, the biographical story about Pharrell Williams that was recently shot here. This is a biopic created in Legos. Average Joe, a Marine who becomes a high school coach, takes a legal stand to defend freedom and religious liberty.
TV and streaming.
Disclaimer on Apple. This is the first TV series from director Alfonso Cuarón, starring Cate Blanchett and Kevin Kline. Caddo Lake on Max. When an 8-year-old girl disappears, a series of past deaths and disappearances begin to link together. The Predeeps of Pittsburgh on Prime, a comedy about an Indian family who moves to the titular town. Lonely Planet on Netflix. At a retreat in Morocco, a woman, Laura Dern, falls for a younger man, Liam Hemsworth. That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. This is TV Jerry.
For more Sister, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.